to the shop. My name is Jeff O'Connor, and you're back on the O'Connor Woodworking YouTube channel. Now, Hans today is not going to be with us very much because in Virginia Beach we got about 6 to 8 inches of snow, so he is going to be partying in the snow pretty much the entire show, so don't expect to see him very much. Today what we're going to be doing is assembling our dovetails. So we went through a couple videos. I showed you how I outline them, how I saw cut them, and then how I chisel those out. Now we're going to go in the process of actually gluing those up and putting them into clamps. Before we get started, I want to show you that I normally finish the insides of my boxes first, and that's because it takes a little bit long to try to get in there when you have the box assembled already. Much quicker when you do it prior to assembly. Now, you'll see some stain in that's on the tails here. The important thing when we assemble is to keep the insides of our joints stain free. So you can see on the insides of these pins, stain free. Inside the tails, no stain. That's going to help the glue to adhere and make sure we get a good solid joint. Very important. So without further ado, we're going to shift over and we're going to start assembling these dovetails. Okay, here we are back at the bench. I have my pin board now mounted in my vise, and I've got a small board underneath it, which helps me to protect the bottom pins when I start hammering in the vise here. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill my pot here with glue. I use regular tight bound original. It's always worked. I think it always will. Next thing I'm going to do for these pins, I'm only going to put the glue on the pins. I don't put them on the tails. You get plenty of coverage here on just the pins. And when you hammer them together, you're going to have a nice tight fitting joint anyways. So if you put glue on both sides, you're probably going to end up squeezing most of it out anyway. Okay, so now I've got all my pin faces with the glue on them. Now I'm going to take my A board, which has the A on this side, so I know that both boards are correct. I put it across the top of my board here. Now I take my mallet, start fitting it in. Okay, now I'm going to use my high-speed dovetail set block here to make sure I just set in the tails. Okay, I'm going to remove that from the vise. I'm going to check this for square. And we got to bring it in just a little bit. Okay, that's where we want to be. Now I'm going to put the other pin board, which is going to be, let's see, our D board, right? Match it up with D, put that in the vise, and we're going to do the same thing with our glue here. Now, a key component is here to work quickly, because as the glue hits the wood fibers, it's going to start to swell. So we want to make sure that we are acting quickly. You know, don't make a phone call in between this. I say that because I answered a phone call one time and did not have good results. All right, so we've got all our faces done. Now we're going to assemble the second. Same thing as before. This time I'm going to use my dead blow mallet just to show you the difference when you're assembling. Joiner's mallet versus a dead blow. They both work fairly the same. Okay, now we're going to remove that. Check that for square. We're going to shift that in just a bit. All right, now acting quickly, we're getting this back up on top, and we're going to start putting the last tailboard on top. So let's swing around. Okay, so now we're applying on the pins once again. Again, we're acting quick here. We're starting to get glue settings, so we'll make sure we get all these locked in place before it swells too much. This silicone glue pot that I use, they sell these at Rockler and at Woodcraft. I think this one's from Woodcraft, but these are awesome because after your glue dries, you literally just pull out your scab of glue and you're ready to reuse this thing versus trying to reuse a cup every time. Okay, now I'm gonna match my B to my B, get that on top. I'm gonna get one side started and I'm gonna bring the other side into it. Now for this, I start spinning this board around. It helps me assemble quickly. Okay, now we've got our four sides are all joined together. I'm going to quickly check for square here. And that looks good. So we're going to move this over and start clamping up. Okay, here we are at the clamps now. I put the box in the clamps, and when I set these up, I'm going to clamp right along the tails here. And if you look at my tails, they sit a little bit proud of the pins. So that's gonna be good for me because now I can just put the pressure on the tails and not worry about it. If they were flush, I'd have to use cawls so I can put the pressure where I want it. Now with this type of box, not being real big and pretty easy to keep in the square because it's pine, it's light, I don't usually clamp up on all the sides of the box. Right now I'm gonna do clamps just on the tail side. And that's gonna hold it nice and square for me while this dries. And really what I'm trying to do is lock it in so as the wood swells, it doesn't shift out of place. If I'm doing a big blanket chest or something like that, out of walnut, or I'm worried about it kind of shifting out of square, then I'll clamp these sides as well. But for this being a small box, it's not gonna need it. So just a firm tightening, not super tight. I don't wanna bow the wood. I don't wanna crack it, just enough to hold it in place. I'm gonna recheck my square real quick. That's good. And that's good. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this clamped down for about an hour, and then I'll take the clamps off and we'll be ready to start doing some planing and sanding and moving towards finishing. All right, we're back here. Hans apparently has finished his snow activities for the day and is now warming himself by the fire. So I'm gonna get him a little cup of hot chocolate, and in about an hour, I'm gonna swing back over and get these clamps off because this wood ain't gonna work itself. My name is Jeff O'Connor. Thanks for joining me again, and we'll see you next time.